President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke for 2 hours on a call that President Trump called meaningful and productive. And according to the president, now both Russia and Ukraine are ready for formal talks for a ceasefire. Quote, he said, and more importantly, to end the war. President Trump said that he had also spoken to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy and European leaders to push the process forward. It's a bold claim from President Trump, but let's look at the facts. President Trump is pitching himself as a deal maker once again, someone who can succeed diplomatically, where former President Joe Biden, NATO, and the EU have all hit a wall. And in fairness, the fact that Putin even took the call, let alone for 2 hours, is noteworthy. That's more than most world leaders have gotten out of Moscow in the last year. It suggests that there's at least some willingness on Russia's part to entertain a diplomatic framework under President Trump's leadership. But here's the catch. Putin didn't agree to a ceasefire. Well, not yet at least. In fact, while the Kremlin confirmed the call and acknowledged that it was quote-unquote frank, Putin repeated his long-standing demands that Ukraine demilitarize and that the West ends its support for Kyiv, and most controversially, that Ukraine recognize Russia's control over the territories it has occupied. Those are non-starters for Zelenskyy, and they cross every red line that NATO and the EU have drawn since 2022. Well, he's proposed holding negotiations in a neutral location, possibly the Vatican, and has warned that if progress isn't made, the U.S. could step back from involvement. That may be Trump's way of pressuring Zelenskyy to the table by hinting that American military aid isn't guaranteed. It's leverage, but it's also risky. If Ukraine is pushed into a deal where it has to surrender territory in exchange for peace, it could be seen as a betrayal, not just by Ukrainians, but by allies who poured billions into defending the country's sovereignty. Remember, this isn't just about land, it's about precedent, about whether a country can redraw borders by force in the 21st century and get away with it. A ceasefire that leaves Russian troops in place might pause the war, but it won't bring peace. It would freeze the conflict and possibly set the stage for another one later. President Trump may believe that his relationship with Putin gives him unique leverage, and maybe it does. But this moment demands more than a deal for the sake of a headline. It demands a sustainable resolution, one that protects Ukraine's sovereignty and avoids rewarding the aggressor. Even though most military analysts believe that Ukraine is simply not winning this war. But to be clear, opening the door to diplomacy is a good thing. War fatigue is real, the death toll is rising, and global pressure to find an off-ramp is mounting. If Trump's intervention forces this conversation, well, that's valuable. He's opened a line that was frozen. That's step one. But unless the core issues are addressed, territory, security, sovereignty, this may be just another headline and not history in the making.